Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. A busy episode of Canucks Conversation, but a Thursday episode nonetheless. So we are going to play Family Feud later on, but we got some news, I'd say an hour or two right before going live. The rest of the coaching staff has been figured out. The Canucks announcing today the remaining names for Adam Foote's coaching staff. Obviously, we talked yesterday about how Yogi Svechkovsky is leaving the team to join Rick Tocchet. Brett McLean and Scott Young and Kevin Dean, who we heard about the other day as well, are the big names. We're going to talk about those guys as individuals later in the show. Probably anyone else, to be honest with you, because it was a pretty illuminating, I thought, Zoom call that we had with Adam Foote as he joined from the Rogers Center on Work from Dome Day, which was really, really funny. The Jays actually replied to me on Twitter when I tweeted out that Adam Foote was doing it from Rogers Center because he shared that he was at a Jays game, and it's Work from Dome Day, so they encourage people to work from the Rogers Center, and that's what Adam Foote did. And it was pretty quiet. So now we'll find out down the road, but I would assume for Work from Dome Day they keep the volume down a little bit. PA announcer whispers. I don't know. It was good. It was good volume. You could hear Adam Foote pretty clearly on that call.
Love that. Coincidentally, I was at the gym and the Jays game was on, so I got forced into watching baseball. So
Harmon's watching. He's like, "Is that Adam Foote in the fourth row on the phone? What's going on right now?" No, we'll get into that. We'll get into the call. We'll get into what Adam Foote said about his assistant coaches later in the show. But you can tell by the title that today we're talking practice facility, because after yesterday's show, actually we chatted about it. Or no, we actually didn't do a show yesterday. Excuse me. I was on the phone with the two gentlemen that are joining the show today, so I thought I did an episode because I've already talked to these guys. But we have two guests on the show today to talk practice facility. That would be Patrick Johnston and Irfaan Gaffar. We didn't do a show yesterday, just to be clear, but a photo dropped. This photo of Jim Rutherford in shorts, looking casual as ever, with Patrick Allvin, Michael Doyle, who, of course, is the Canucks president of business operations, and Dax Aqualini, who is the son of Roberto, nephew of Francesco. So they were at Rosemary Brown, which is a recreation center in South Burnaby, right by Burn Creek School. And I'm going to refrain from saying anything about Burn Creek as a SD41 kid myself. Burn Creek's the crappiest school in the Burnaby School District. I'll just say that. I think they had a big reno though, so maybe it's better now. I said I would refrain. I can't. I went to school in Burnaby. Burn Creek's a dump, but it might be better now. So anyways, that area is going under a lot of development right now. So that's going to be one thing we talk about, but the photo dropped. People are freaking out. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk with Patrick Johnston specifically about that South Burnaby practice facility location. Let's bring in Patrick, who's brought to you by our friends over at Pacific Toyota Dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. An SUV packed with plenty of space, the BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. It's backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota, and if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get a $5,000 incentive, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X LE all-wheel drive from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. All right, Patrick Johnston of the Province joins us. Patrick, you wrote about it yesterday, the visit, and I don't even call it our neck of the woods. We're both North Burnaby men. They go to South Burnaby for some reason. Tell us about this visit to Rosemary Brown.
Well, first of all, David, Burn Creek has a hell of a boys basketball team. So, I don't know what you're talking about. But
they're not as good as Burnaby South. Burnaby South is routinely the top school. Anyway. And I was on the Alpha team, so I'm not even going to go into
that's
how
shocking.
Bad that team was.
The idea of you being on any basketball team.
Glue guy.
Yeah. Anyway.
Walks out.
Yeah. Wrote it up, called up. Obviously being a former teacher, I know people. So I actually had a good chat with someone who used to work at Burn Creek and gave me a lot of insight about all the things that are possible around that arena and the land that's available and so on and so on and so on. Listen, I think the conclusion is that this is actually the kind of facility that it makes a lot of sense as a facility. The location, you still got to squint. I mean, the thing is, it's actually not that far from the airport. It's roughly, it's about 25 minutes according to Google, give or take, depending on traffic, obviously. It's about 20 minutes usually from UBC. UBC, I still think is the most ideal spot, but obviously they've moved on from that. The location other half of it, the location story, is not great. It's like an hour from Kits, and a lot of guys live in Kits. And it's half an hour if the traffic works for you from Rogers Arena. So, like, it strikes me as more of, and maybe Irf will talk about this later in terms of overall design questions, but it strikes me as much as anything as looking at the kind of place you're trying to understand what a place should look like, what is possible in the region, what can you build, who builds it, who's available. It's a nice facility. There is space there. There is a couple of multi-purpose rooms. There is some sort of underground space, I understand. And that could be built into. So, there are things about it. Obviously, 2 rinks there. There's some limited seating. I understand sort of the appeal of it as a notion, but in terms of location, still not ideal. And I think there are still better spaces to come. And I think Irf is going to weigh in on that later.
He is, and I do want to ask you about like what, and I know you talked about the underground as well, but realistically, let's say Rosemary Brown's the place. They say, screw travel times. It's fine. It's fine. The players are going to have to suck it up, and they're going to all move to, they're all going to
Deer
move
Lake.
there. Yeah, Deer Lake.
They'll live in some of those lovely old 1980s mansions up the hill from Deer Lake.
There you go. Oh, in Cliff Ronning's neck of the woods. Okay,
there you go.
But my question, what makes that the facility itself, what makes it an ideal place? Because they're still going to have to build.
That's the space thing. And this is the thing that I think people miss a lot of. It's the sort of the training center aspect of all of this. And, when you're at Rogers Arena, listen, they've maxed out all the space they have there. They would like more space for their physios, more space for treatment tables, a bigger gym, more space for sort of all kinds of, physio type stuff, stuff that they would like to have more. And the thing to understand is a lot of these teams, think about in terms of like the Whitecaps, right? The Whitecaps play at BC Place, but where are the Whitecaps actually based? They're based at their training facility. A lot of NHL teams look at it this way. When there's a concert on, for instance, at Rogers Arena, the concert buys out the Canucks team spaces. They can't actually get in there. So on a Tuesday in March, when you have a player who's looking to get treatment, they often can't get into their own facility because there's a concert that night. Having 24/7 access to your own space is part of being a modern sports organization. There is a reason why the 31 other teams in NHL either have this or have a plan for it. The Canucks are a real outlier in this regard, and that's why it's not just you got to have it. I know, we only use it a few days a year. It's not the practice. It's all the other stuff. The practice stuff is just nice to have. You can figure that part out. But having a permanent base, having a place that you have access to all the time is important. And that's the sign of a modern functioning NHL organization. And right now the Canucks are an outlier in that regard.
We know the Canucks have been talking about a practice facility forever, but it sort of action-wise feels like it's sort of been on the back burner. The fact that they're out actually checking facilities out, do you think ownership feels an extra urgency to get this done sooner rather than later, especially considering the practice facility issue seemed to potentially weigh on Rick Tocchet's decision to leave Vancouver?
Well, it's something that Jim Rutherford himself has been talking about. It was one of the first things he raised. And I think I remember at the time raising my eyebrows a little bit because, of course, I was very early on this beat. It's not been a straightforward thing. And there have been plans and there have been negotiations. And at one point there was a deal to do one across the street in the Plaza of Nations in a development that still hasn't happened. So I suppose to their credit, maybe they knew something there by walking away. But they walked away from that deal. They've had talks with other places. They've met with UBC. They've met with other. I actually had heard other things in the city of Burnaby. They've met the Oval. They've looked around. It's not like this is a new process. But yeah, I think you're right, Harm. It had stalled a little bit. It's certainly they hit an impasse in terms of how they're trying to approach this, and they're trying to make a deal. As many have pointed out, these guys are developers. Making deals is nothing new to them. So it is a bit odd from that standpoint. This has taken as long as it has, and Jim Rutherford has been very patient every time we've asked him about it. He knows it's not going to go away, but it's clearly something that they want to get done. And so the fact that they are visiting facilities, and we wouldn't know about this but for, I guess, a Canucks fan taking a photo and posting it on social media. We wouldn't necessarily have known about that. I made an inquiry about something else and was said, oh, well, no, there's a couple meetings today, so I'm not sure we'll be able to get back to you. But as I said to as it became clear. Well, I can see what at least one of the meetings was, and then credit to Irf revealing, I guess the other meeting was they went to visit Britannia. So yeah, getting around, seeing what's out there, trying to understand not just what they could move into, but what they could build and how long it's going to take. I mean, I suppose you'd want to find this out a little bit, sooner than now, but I guess at least they're finding out.
I was going to ask you this. This is from Mike in the Valley. He asked this as well. Like, is it going to be a partnership? I'm going to ask you to weigh what you think it is. Because, look, I broke the SFU thing. I talked about SFU. That was always going to be a partnership. That was hinging on SFU getting D1 hockey. It was going to be a partnership. They give them the land. Canucks pay for the building.
Yeah.
What do you think this ends up being in the end?
I think partnership. Yeah, I mean, these things get done as a partnership. That is how that is how the Aqualinis operate anyway. Right? Look at their land development. None of those buildings are done on their own. Right? They're working mostly in general. They work with one of the indigenous. They work with MST, which is the three Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh setup. But there's also they're working with Musqueam on the development in Burnaby. Like they will end up partnering. I mean, that's the thing. It's not a case of they go and buy the land and do the whole thing themselves. And that's just not how they've done business anyway. Most developers don't necessarily do that. They certainly haven't done it that way. So yeah, there is going to be someone for whom, I mean, and I think Irf can speak more to this, but the Britannia one, for instance, like the city needs to get that done. And if they can slide in and say, hey, we'll do the building, whatever. I mean, the deals are way far beyond what anything we're going to talk about in a sports conversation, but there's certainly an element where you can see where they bring a particular skill set to the table and do it with a partner who more than likely puts up the capital or something to that regard.
Okay, steering away from the practice facility conversation for just a second. You had a piece up at the province breaking down how Pedersen and Demko weren't part of the Canucks' recent marketing push and what it might mean for their futures. Great piece. Everybody should check it out. There was one line in there that really stood out to me directly from the article. It was from another source said management is looking to, quote, get rid of the emotionally soft, diva, drama type, cancerous players without doing a traditional rebuild. My jaw dropped reading that. Can you just expand on...
Well, I mean,
sort of that
we
piece.
know people that know people. So, like, listen, is this my source projecting his own feelings? Probably, but that certainly was his viewpoint on what they're trying to do, and we know that. Like, they've talked about the culture, and we've heard all kinds of stuff about how messed up the culture was, and that stood out to me when thinking about the broader what they're trying to do. They're trying to move things overall in a new direction, and it's a time where They are not happy with how things went this year. I mean, it wasn't just Miller and Pedersen, I think, in the end. It was also just an overall, Miller got praise for the way he came in prepared. That still stands out to me in sort of the isolation of that, perhaps. There were struggles with a number of players. And it's a team that perhaps it was good. I mean, I heard this said before, and certainly during the season, that if you look back to when management showed up, for sure in 21-22, I think they were perhaps taken aback at how sort of self-confident this group was with very little behind them, especially coming off a season as bad as 2021 was. Now, obviously, that wasn't necessarily all their fault because they weren't given a whole lot of support from ownership, right? I mean, the budget was cut back. We well know this. The team was in a real mess, and they weren't playing well. And the sort of the way to get things done. And Patrick Alvin said this himself in basically one of his first availabilities with us, and certainly said it at the end of that season in 2022, is that we need to reset how we approach things and how we see things and how we go about things. And that has been a consistent message. And some of the players have taken that on. I think we know Quinn Hughes took that on. But I do think we know there has been a consistent frustration from the top at how the team has prepared itself, and they've gone through 3 different coaches now, and all 3 coaches have run into the same thing. And so, I get it. It's a dramatic quote, and but it was someone who has I talked to and has an interesting insight on the team, and that's their viewpoint on how they feel management's trying to approach things, and we can see it. They've got coaches again that are very dialed in. I mean, I think, for instance, looking at this coaching staff, like Scott Young has worked as a development guy. He's very dialed in on what young players are like. Here's a guy that has had a lot of success. I mean, I remember him as a player. He was a hardworking, hard-nosed, very skilled player. I used to joke that there's two kinds of American hockey players. There's players from Detroit and there's players from Boston. The guys from Detroit were guys like Doug Weight, who had lots of skill, and then there were guys from Boston who were like guys like Jeremy Roenick and Keith Tkachuk, and Scott Young, for that matter, for guys who wanted to put you through the glass and also hit slap shots. So like, he's a guy that has played with an edge. He understands the game. To me, it speaks. I mean, I think our instincts are that Adam Foote's kind of inclined towards that as well. Even if he's perhaps learned more, which is what Rick Tocchet told me, right before the hiring, that this is a guy that has learned a lot more about how to keep himself calm, and the players have praised him for being that island in the storm when things aren't going right. And yet, yeah, it's a group that needs. I guess they think they needs a little more hard edge and a bit more of a hammer on them, and we'll see how this plays out.
PJ, before we let you go, can you rank your top 5 biggest divas on the team?
Oh my God, I'm not doing that.
Sure.
David Quadrelli, Harmon Dial. No, it's Thomas Drance. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks so much for doing
Irf Gaffar, Jeff Patterson.
Hey,
Nancy Karras and Drance. No, I'm kidding.
Anyway. Thanks so much for doing this, PJ. We'll chat with you soon. Appreciate
it,
guys. There he is, Patrick Johnston. And like Harmon said, go read his piece over at the Province. His piece yesterday and today. Guys, just pumping these things out. Okay, let's get to Irfaan Gaffar, who had more to add on this. Irf is brought to you by our friends over at Greta. By now, Greta's a great spot to watch the big game. There was a big game last night that we didn't even talk about yet. But did you know it's an even better spot for your upcoming part of your event? If you need a venue for a team building or summer social event, check out Greta. With the great street food menu, the bar, and the arcade, it's always a fun time with plenty of options. Make sure when you need your next event, make it at Greta. To book it, go to gretabar.com. Greta Bar YVR is the 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Absolutely labored through that ad read. My apologies to Greta. Use Greta for your next spot, for your next team building event. Let's bring in Irfaan Gaffar. I think we need a team building event. Let's go hang out with Irf. Irf, you and I were chatting yesterday. You reported it as well. The second visit there was to Britannia Ice Rink, which Google Maps tells me is kind of a dump. Can you expand on that?
It is a dump. Apparently, if you talk to guys that have skated in the summer, some of the best ice in the Lower Mainland.
I keep seeing that.
Britannia.
People keep saying Britannia is like the best ice in the.
I mean, it's minus 30 in there anytime you go in there, so it's kept well. But look, you're right. I mean, I think the biggest thing, like I tweeted yesterday, is the fact that they're looking and they're serious about looking. But Britannia would be the revitalization of the area around it. And I think for the Vancouver Canucks, I heard you guys talking about, South Burnaby and what's going on there. It's already existing. Like, I think what the Canucks want to do is have something that is there, or an outline of something that's there, and then add to it, right? They go to Burnaby, they're not going to own it.
Yeah.
Right. You go to Britannia. Okay. You work a deal with the city and you figure it out. And, you use that to your advantage to try and make the whole area around it better and create that, practice facility feel. It's 12, 13 minutes from Rogers Arena. Most guys live, like PJ said, in Kitts or in downtown Vancouver. So it's not far. It would make sense. But look, Britannia is not the first. The place in South Burnaby is not the second place. UBC is not the third place. Like, these guys are going to look. They're going to be active. They're going to go scout locations, and they're going to see what existing buildings have before they get an idea of what they actually want. Yes, there are 31 other teams that have practice facilities. NFL teams all have excellent practice facilities. I would be shocked if the Canucks weren't reaching out, talking to people in that world as to what is important to have a very successful run franchise when it comes to a practice facility. But a long time coming. I know a lot of people are pissed off about it and saying, okay, well, it's finally now. And all it took was Rick Tocchet to, say something in the media, and then in Philadelphia again to get the ownership moving. But again, like PJ said, this is something that Jim Rutherford said from one of his first press conferences when he was hired here in Vancouver, that a practice facility is needed. And the good news, like I just said, is the fact that they're going and actively and seriously looking at spots.
How much does location actually matter in terms of a practice facility? Because of course, convenience-wise, Britannia would be a lot better than, let's say, South Burnaby. But I've been around a lot of different NHL teams on the road, and not all their practice facilities are close to the actual rinks. For example, the Kings practice facility is out in El Segundo. It's about 30-ish minutes away from 30, 40, depending on traffic, away from Crypto.com Arena. There are others around the NHL that it's not like the practice facility is right nearby their actual home rink. How much does location actually matter when it comes to building this facility?
I think it's big. I mean, I'll start with the LA Kings because Crypto.com Arena is so heavily used for different things within the Lakers, and they had the Clippers there, and obviously they share that building with concerts, one of the busiest buildings in North America. You had to have your own. All the players live near Manhattan Beach or around that area, so that's close. Vancouver's a much smaller city, right, in sense of that. And I know people were talking about, Seattle's is 35 minutes from Seattle. Nobody on the Kraken lives in downtown Seattle. Nobody. When it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, a lot of players do live in downtown. A lot of players live in Kitsilano. And the area to drive isn't that far. So if you can find something that's close, I really do think it's going to make a difference, right? You don't want guys being in their car for 30, 40 minutes during rush hour traffic at 8 in the morning to go get treatment at 8:45. Like, I just think that the location does matter. And I think that it's important, right? It's important to sell to free agents. It is. Like right now you're selling that, okay, we have a practice, we just skate at Rogers Arena. And we sometimes go to UBC and we sometimes go to Burnaby, right? And those are the one-off locations of when they do have to practice there when the building's in use. But if you get something 15, 20 minutes from ideally in the downtown core, because Kitts isn't far from there where a lot of players do live, I think that's obviously a very huge selling point for them.
So just back to Britannia, like what's the holdup? We just said, it's a great place. Go redevelop all that space. Like, is it now they got to wait for the city to agree to something? Like, what would be the holdup if we see a perfect location that isn't a historical landmark, as I thought it was yesterday?
We did talk about this.
Yeah, when I looked at a zoning map and read it wrong. But anyways, what would be the holdup? Do you think?
I don't know if it's a holdup. I just think it's them doing their due diligence and looking around in different areas to figure out what the best plan is for them moving forward. If you're an organization that's willing to drop 50, 60, 70 million, 80 to 100 to revitalize a whole area, you better be damn sure that this is the perfect place. And I think for Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, and then obviously to Francesco Aquilini, who's essentially the guy that's going to have to sign off on everything, it's important to nail it, right? And is this an area where, is it going to be a practice facility, or do you want to own the buildings around it? Do you want to have that area where, you do put stuff? Say fans have you have an open practice. You're going to want what you own in and around the area. You're not going to want a coffee shop that isn't owned by you to be near there. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of business things that have to go into consideration. These guys are very smart when it comes to business aspect of it. We'll see what happens here with the practice facility, but I don't think that there's any holdup. I don't think anything's been signed saying that, Britannia is a spot. It's a spot that they have looked at, as other spots are. I think the important thing, like I just said off the top, and I tweeted, is that they're looking, and they're seriously looking. So you might see TMZ Vancouver again somewhere where, where Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin are out looking at a spot. They might even be in Richmond. They might be in Langley. Doesn't mean that they're going to go there. They're getting ideas, they're collecting information, and then they're going to figure out where they want to go. There's land to be developed in this city. If anyone knows about land development, it's the Aqualini family, and where there are certain places that are still open that haven't even been developed yet in Vancouver. So there's certain places like that as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, look, I don't think a practice facility is going to shoot up out of the ground there for the start of training camp. Like it's just not going to happen, and it's not realistic. This is probably a year or two away from even becoming a whole thing. But the fact of the matter is that they're serious about it.
About a month or two ago, there were some people speculating about, could the Aquilini family be interested in potentially selling the team? Just big picture, not talking about a super short timeline, but if you look at the next number of years, What's your sense on how committed the Aqualini family is to still owning the Vancouver Canucks, and whether they would be potentially interested in a sale?
Very committed. I think with the new TV deal kicking in, there's a lot of money that's going to go around to owners in the NHL. I think where there's smoke, there's fire on expansion when it comes to the NHL. And with expansion comes more money going into the owners' pockets, which also is a reason why this practice facility stuff is kind of being expedited a little bit more, right? There's money coming in, and you have nothing. You don't even need to play a game and you're going to get money, right? So I think that when you look at that, and what is it? The Sportico valuation was like 750K or 750 million or something like that the team's worth. It's a lot of money, right? And I think the franchise, if they do build a practice facility that's in and around the area of downtown Vancouver, the valuation only goes up. State of the art, brand new, it's got all the bells and whistles, got anything anyone wants. The value is only going to go up. If they make the playoffs next year miraculously, valuations go up. So I do think that they're committed. I think that, the Vancouver Canucks and is a very big deal to them. So many people talk about them being worried about their business and the Canucks, the business side and all the AIG stuff. But I know for a fact that the Vancouver Canucks is a very important part of their portfolio of what they have.
Anything else you just want to get off your chest? Anything you want to say about anything that you've seen over the last 48 hours about the practice facility conversation?
I'm just happy that I've been part to this absolute crazy discourse about the practice facility and the stuff that we've talked about. Obviously, when I've seen you guys out, we've talked about stuff and in practice facility and things like that. But yesterday I had someone in my mentions, telling me the exact distance it was from Alex Edler's old house to Rogers Arena at 6 p.m. because it's still listed on for sale. So, and he was telling me about 6 p.m. I'm pretty sure players are going to be at the rink before then. But look, there's an appetite for everything in Canucks in this market. I appreciate that. I have the fans back when it comes to a lot of the stuff that, involves this team. I think that they deserve to be in the know for a lot of it. It's a passionate as hell fan base, and I respect the hell out of them. You even look yesterday. I mean, the Abbotsford Canucks were going up against the Edmonton Oilers on TV, and our rink-wide post-game show numbers were close to 5,000 people. Still care, right? Still care about this team and this organization. So that's an important thing to remember as well.
Love it.
You had to go ahead. Yeah, no. I just generally wanted to ask. It's been a while since we've had a chance to chat with you. Wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things. First, on Brock Boeser. Do you think there's any chance that they circle back and make another sort of final last-minute offer, considering how weak the free agent market is and how expensive it could be to trade for guys? And second, when it comes to Elias Pettersson and Thatcher Demko, what's your sense on how committed the organization is or isn't on keeping those guys beyond this offseason?
I'll start with Brock. I don't think the Canucks are going to move off the 5-year term. I just don't. And from Brock's perspective, if you have a team that's willing to give you 6-7 years, at $8 million, that was the number, right? Or was it $5? It was $40 million over 5 years that Brock can't turn down. You go get your money. I think there are teams out there that will give Brock that money on a 6 or 7 year deal. I think a team like Ottawa is an interesting one for Brock. There's obviously the connection with the Minnesota Wild. And then there's definitely going to be some other teams out there that, would maybe in the Leafs, would they be interested in a guy like Brock at maybe a little bit lower cost? You're probably going to lose Marner. So he's going to have some suitors. And for a guy like Brock, look, I respect Brock Boeser, hell of a hockey player. Did he get done dirty a little bit here by the Vancouver Canucks organization? Probably. And I think that still stings a little bit for sure. When it comes to Thatcher Demko, that's the interesting one, right? Is it going to be a 3-year deal? Is it going to be a 4-year deal? Think Linus Ullmark contract. Was it 4 at 8 point something?
8.25.
Yeah, I think that's the one that you probably look at for him and say, okay, if there's something in and around that number, is he going to say yes to it? Or does he want to be here for the next little while, after seeing Kevin Lincoln and obviously the emergence of Archer Shilovs? Obviously, we can talk about that way later on. But I think that when you look at the grand scheme of things, if Thatcher Demko thinks that there's a team out there that is willing to give him the extra year or whatever, things like that. And from the Canucks standpoint, they're like, okay, what can we get for Thatcher Demko right now? I'm not entirely sure that the NHL market as a whole is buying really high on Thatcher Demko right now. Elias Pettersson's interesting, right? That's the biggest one. That's the bajillion-dollar question. The $100 million question is what the hell is going to happen with this guy? They have until July 1st. Do I think that they're going to go back and consider every option? Absolutely. Do I think that teams will call about Elias Pettersson? Absolutely. It's going to take a mammoth offer because of the way that the Canucks view him. There were teams that, called at the trade deadline. Nothing came through, or nothing actually happened because of that. I think that they have some trust in him. If he makes it through July 1st, it's going to be big. But then what's to say where he comes back next season, doesn't have a good year, things start going sideways for him, he goes to management and was like, I'm only going here. Here's 2 teams. Trade me there. Like there's a lot of different variables that are out there for a guy like Elias Pettersson. And it's still a question mark. I really don't know. And I don't know if we can put anything set in stone for that guy next season.
June 5th. Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment in this market, Irf. We'll chat with you soon. You back on Rinkwide coming up here?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Beautiful.
They can close it out. The Texas Stars looking to stave off elimination. As Don Taylor once said, that's the word you always use in broadcasting as young broadcaster. Stave off elimination. You're TJ McConnell. That's the basketball player. Quads. Playing for Indy. You're TJ McConnell. You're talking about he's a basketball player? That's who you are.
I'm totally lost. What do you mean? Do you think I look like him?
No. You were saying, you're a basketball player. You played for the Alpha basketball team. You were a glue guy.
Oh, yeah. I kind of do look
Quad's
like
basketball knowledge is we do not want to go down.
But also someone out there is going to know exactly what I mean and laugh. That's all that matters.
He does kind of look like
Quad, I do look like
him.
I googled it. I do look like him a little bit. I just boxed out, man. That was my job.
Shoot threes, be nice to refs.
Shoot threes. I wasn't great at it, but once in a while I'd hit one. Irf, thanks so much for doing this, man. We really appreciate it.
All right, gentlemen, be well. Enjoy it.
There he is. Irfaan Gaffar, you can catch on Rinkwide. What do we call it? Rinkwide Abbotsford? I think so. Rinkwide. Just Rinkwide. You can watch it tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Abbotsford Canucks as well. We actually have a lot to get to. Abbotsford Canucks obviously take the overtime winner. Actually, can we just watch it right now, Jacob? Do we have the Klimovich goal?
I do. I've got it ready.
Attaboy. All right. So Abbotsford goes into overtime, and then Danila Klimovich, who you may have heard, probably shouldn't have been drafted where he was, gets rid of all that notion because he moves in on the backhand through the slot and just roofs one for the double overtime winner 4 minutes into double OT. My goodness, man. It's one of the nicest goals I think we've seen at any level.
Yeah, especially double OT winner, cap it off like that. Massive leverage swing, right? Between if Texas wins that game, they tie up the series compared to Abbotsford. Klimovich gets a winner. Now you've got a 3-1. You're clearly in the driver seat position there. And huge moment for Klimovich because he drew into the lineup for Lecker-Mackey, who needed a reset because after coming alive in the middle of that Colorado series, he went a little bit quiet again. Klimovich has been in and out of the lineup. He has been fighting for an opportunity in these playoffs, and he needed a big moment like this and an absolute beauty. And from the team's perspective, we're really learning through this playoff run that the Abbotsford Canucks can play and win basically any way you want, right? We've seen them win 1-0 games where they're relying on their defensive structure, their goaltending with Artur Shilovs, but we've also seen them win these, 5-4 type games where it's a track meet style, trading chances off the rush, higher scoring, but they also have a dominant physical element to their game as well. Where they're happy to play that rough and tumble style, mucking it up in the corners, laying heavy hits. So this is just a versatile team that can win in so many different ways to where they don't need to dictate their specific playing style on you to win. They can adapt and be successful in many different ways. And that's what's been really impressive through this playoff run.
Up 3-1. They've got a chance now to close out the series and go to the Calder Cup final. Getting closer and closer to that parade I keep talking about. I'm sure we're going to chat Abbotsford. Probably tomorrow we'll honestly talk more ahead of their game against the Texas Stars. But before we go any further, and before we get to Family Feud, I want to tell everybody about our friends at the Vancouver Whitecaps. The Whitecaps fell in the CONCACAF Champions Cup down in Mexico, but now have their focus on MLS League play with some big matches coming up. The Caps are tops in the Western Conference with a 5-1-2 record at home, and this Sunday at BC Place, the Caps are in action against their Cascadia rivals from Seattle. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. For tickets and more information, check out whitecapsfc.com.
Welcome to Vancouver and to BC Place, the home of Jesper Sorensen's Vancouver Whitecaps FC.
Brian White leaps up and Sebastian
All right, let's do it. Let's get to the feud. Take it away, technical producer Jacob Lazar.
Oh, I've got the audio looped, but that's all right. It's time for another edition of Canucks Conversation Family Feud. Sorry, everyone. We'll let it go again. Why not? There we go. That was fun. All right, guys. I need to adjust my camera here as I fumble through the start of Family Feud. I'm gonna say this off the start. A lot of times in recent Family Feuds, I've said, "Oh, this is an easy one," and then you guys go out and get like 112 points. This one's actually an easy one. I called up a buddy. I had him play it. He got 156 points in the first round. So,
okay.
Quads.
Was he on a timer?
No, but like
there you go.
He finished in like 25 seconds. So
all right,
we're good. Quads, anything less than 100, and I'm going to be so disappointed in you.
Okay.
For those of you who are new, Quads will go first. He'll have 25 seconds on the clock. His time will begin when I finish reading the first question. If you can't think of a response, he'll say pass, and we'll come back to it at the end. And if you want to contribute to this segment, we don't have the new survey out yet, but check back on tomorrow's show. It'll be in the description. You can submit your survey responses. All right, Quads, are you ready to go?
Yeah, no pressure.
For a player to be considered a second line winger, how many points, rounded to the nearest 5, do you expect them to score in a season?
60.
Who will be second in point scoring on the 25-26 Canucks?
Elias Pettersson.
In an apocalypse situation, which NHL mascot would you trust to protect your life?
Gritty.
Which NHL vet switching teams to end his career would be most shocking?
Jamie Benn.
Name a superhero you want to play for the Canucks next season. Superman. Got it in right at the end.
That's a good question. That was a good survey, Jacob. That was a good survey.
Yeah, you'll like when we go through at the end. Some of the responses in there are definitely worth talking about.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that was good. Karn in the chat said Jacob with the reverse psychology ready for the biggest fumble of all time. So as Jacob tallies that up, Harm, I'll tell you, the first thing Jacob told me is that this one is actually easy. And he said he got a friend to do it and that he got 156 points in his first round. So Jacob just put a ton of pressure on me.
Well, right, Quads, you got to 121. So
okay, excellent.
Still good. And you know what? I think Harm's going to take this one home, to be honest with you. So Harmon's going second. He'll have 30 seconds on the clock. His time will begin when I finish reading the first question. Harm, if you can't think of a response, say pass. We'll come back to it at the end. If you give one of Quads' responses, you'll hear the buzzer, and I will ask you to try again. Harm, you ready to go?
1 sec. My mic's not my actual
I will let you fix your mic. I was trying to stall as long as I could there and drag this out. I think we're good now. All right. You need 79 points for the win. And your first question. For a player to be considered a second line winger, how many points, rounded to the nearest 5, do you expect them to score in a season?
50.
Who will be second in point scoring on the 25-26 Canucks?
Elias Pettersson.
Try again.
Connor Garland.
In an apocalypse situation, which NHL mascot would you trust to protect your life?
Gritty.
Try again.
Oh man, Carlton the Bear.
Which NHL vet switching teams to end his career would be most shocking?
Tavares.
Name a superhero you want to play for the Canucks next season. I'll let you answer.
Batman.
Batman.
Great answers, Harm. Good answer. Good
Guys,
answer.
I couldn't think of any mascots off the top of my head.
You guys are going to
That's
be.
Carlton the Bear.
That was the worst answer ever.
Why not Finn? Why not Finn?
He's not. I don't know. Finn scored an own goal in a mascot All-Star game once. I don't think he's going to do a
Wow.
great job of protecting.
Low blow.
So all I'm going to say is when we get to the fourth question, you guys are going to feel so stupid. Like, so.
Finn is number one by a mile, right?
No, not that question. The
Oh.
one after that. Okay, well, let's go. I still think there's a path to victory here, but it is not a lock. I'm going to say that. For a player to be considered a second line winger, how many points rounded to the nearest 5 do you expect them to score? Quads, you got the number 2 answer with 60. Harm, you got the number 1 answer with 50. So that's 34 points right there. So you guys only need 45 more.
The last 45 might be tough.
It might be tough. Who will be second in scoring on the 25-26 Canucks? Both you guys saying Pettersson first. That was the number 1 answer. Quinn Hughes was the number 2 answer. I don't know. I feel the only way Hughes
Well, he's
is
going to lead
not
them in
leading the
scoring.
team is if he gets hurt.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. Connor Garland, only 1 point, Harm.
Who else got points?
Jake DeBrusk was the number 3 answer. And Harm, you might have done it too good of a job last week. The number 4 answer was JJ Peterka.
Well, I was thinking, like, who are they going to... Like, the real answer is somebody that they acquired this offseason.
Yeah.
But I would still bet on... I feel like DeBrusk and Garland were pretty comparable. I'm disappointed Garland only got 1 point.
I'm hearing a beeping
Whose
somewhere.
fire alarm's going off?
I think we're good. now.
God, it's an instant pot.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, PJ Peterka was the number 4 answer. And again, Harm, you did such a good job of advocating for him last week. In an apocalypse situation, which NHL mascot would you trust to protect your life? Gritty was the number 1 answer. No points for Carlton the Bear. Finn was the number 2 answer. Come on, it's Canucks combo.
How many
listener.
points? How many points did we leave on the board?
29 points for Finn.
Oh, that's tough.
Okay, that's okay. That's
38 for Gritty. The Avs mascot Bernie was number 3. He's a mountain dog, one of those Bernese mountain dogs. So he'd probably do a good job protecting you in an apocalypse situation. All right. Which NHL vet switching teams would be to end their career would be most shocking? What I will say is both of you guys got points. Quads, you said Jamie Benn. That was the number 4 answer. That was 8
The
points.
chat, sorry, I need to interrupt you. The chat is giving me a ton of crap, being like, Jamie Benn's such a stupid answer. Jamie Benn's a good answer.
It is a good answer. He was the number 4 answer, but only 8 points. Harm, John Tavares, only 2 points. The number 1 answer was Sidney Crosby.
Ah, yes.
But the
And
number
Alex
2
Ovechkin.
answer was Alexander Ovechkin.
I thought this was referring to like guys who are free agents. That I'm like that's how I interpreted it. Was
Sure.
like guys who are going to be free agents this summer.
Sure.
Like that's my bad in terms of interpreting it that
Anything
way.
that happens. It was which NHL vet switching teams to end his career would be most shocking.
Oh, so it did.
Oh, I assumed it was
also
only
thought
guys that are
Crosby.
UFA. So I was thinking like that Ben,
I thought
Tavares
that's why
kind
I
of
was.
tier.
Oh, okay, Jamie Benn's not the best answer. Though.
No.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
confused by that.
So, Crosby, Ovi, Kopitar was number 3.
Well, we would have said Crosby and Ovi. Okay, whatever. It's okay. It's okay.
I never said pending UFA.
I know, I
just
know, I
said
know.
NHL vet. That's all I said.
It's hard when you've only got 3 seconds to think of an answer, though.
It's true.
It
And
is.
the fact that both of us thought the question like that. Okay. It's
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, you need 42 points going into the last one here.
Oh, jeez.
So, Harm, Quads, you said Superman. That was the number 2 answer, 19 points. Harm, Batman does get you 5 points, but it is a loss.
That's crazy. That's no good. Wow. We might.
Yeah.
Okay, we're taking a week off. No feud next week.
No
We
feud
need to
next week?
reset. We need to reset.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
we'll play something else instead. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Or you know what? The chat's probably going to get really mad at you saying that, Quads, and bully us into doing it again. But I do want to say, oh, wrong. There we go. Get my feud layout here. The superhero one was so good. People are like, Quinn Hughes, except he's already on the team. Someone answered Sidney Crosby for what superhero to play for the Canucks next year. Now, a few people said Iron Man or Batman with the caveat as they're rich and can build a practice facility. So I felt that was pretty topical. And yeah, that's about it, man. I think if you guys picked up obviously Crosby, and then, if you guys said Crosby or Ovi and Finn, would have been an easy victory. No.
It just threw me off. It's hard going second when your number one answers get buzzed multiple times. It's just like,
Do we need to change the strategy, Harm? Do you need to start going first again? Because you've been fine other weeks. That's the thing. I don't want to make a snap, crazy goalie pull and change up our lineup. It's worked for us in the past, but do you think we need a new?
we can test it for next week, and then
All right.
Number one answer, by the way. Sorry, we didn't go over the number one for the superhero. Number one is the Flash. I guess people just want the Canucks to play with some speed, but
Never heard of him.
The Incredible Hulk was number 3 for those who want the Canucks to play with a little more physicality. So there you go. You never heard of the Flash quads, really?
No, I have heard of him. He's like, he runs.
Yeah, he runs. He goes very fast. That's why he's called the Flash.
Okay, also, not to throw Harmon under the bus at all, but people are blaming me for this week's loss in the chat, which is just unbelievable. Like, my questions were fine, my answers were fine, and not Nacho Chingu in the chat said Quad's losing a layup of a Family Feud, so he cancels next week is hilarious. I didn't lose this week. We've both had bad weeks.
Wow, way to Peter DeBoer me.
No. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but this happened last year in the finals as well for you. No. I don't know. Chat's making me turn against you, but look, I'm not saying it was all your fault, but it definitely wasn't my fault.
Okay, Peter.
Look,
DeBoer.
again,
the old Pete DeBoer.
Again, guys, if instead of Ben and Tavares, you guys said Crosby and Ovi, you would have won. So that's a 2-person requirement there. You guys both needed to pull the big guns, but
yeah. Okay, we're not gonna cancel Family Feud next week. Here's someone that's really speaking my language right now. Amrit Badyal in the chat said, just talk about the new coaching staff. No one cares about Family Feud. I'm with Amrit. No one gives a crap about Family Feud. Let's get on to anyone else and let's talk about the new coaching staff. Anyone else is brought to you by our friends over at the Vancouver Canadians. Get on down to the Nat next week because on June 10th, it's the dog day of summer at the Nat where you can bring your pup to the park. There's a nooner at the Nat on Friday the 13th with first pitch at 1:05 p.m. Saturday the 14th is Blue Jays Day and the weekends with a White Spot Family Fun Sunday. For tickets, call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. All right. Michael Avely in the chat said, relegate Quads to tallying the points and promote Jacob. Actually, I want to do that. Can we make that happen, Jacob?
You'll have to. Yeah, I mean, you'll have to come up with the survey.
No problem. Give me the tools. I'll do it.
Yeah, so I can share my documents with you.
That's a great idea.
And then if you want, I can play in your place next week.
You play for me next week. That'll actually be really fun. All right. Let's do it. We'll actually do that. I think that's a great idea. Shout out to Mike for coming up with that one. People are loving me throwing you under the bus with the Pete DeBoer. Like, I'm not saying it was your fault, but it definitely wasn't my fault. Okay. The Canucks coaching staff, Harm. It was announced today, and I followed up with Adam Foote about this because he did a Zoom call while you were at the gym. I followed up with him about whose responsibilities are what, but we should say it is going to be Kevin Dean, as we know, who's coming in to run the defense, and then Brett McLean and Scott Young are joining Dean as Foote's assistants. Just your initial reaction to these few gentlemen being announced as the new assistant coaches.
Yeah, so I did some digging on McLean. Got some help from Mike Russo at The Athletic. He's the gold standard of beat writers over covering the Minnesota Wild, and McLean has spent really the last several years as part of that organization. So McLean, he's actually born and raised in Vancouver Island. He was an assistant for 3 years with the Wild under Dean Evison, and then the head coach of Minnesota's AHL team the last 2 seasons. I'm slightly underwhelmed by the hire, not trying to cast too much judgment early before we've seen him get an opportunity, but he really struggled as a head coach in Iowa this past season. Iowa had the worst power play in the AHL and the worst PK in the NHL or in the AHL. It did not go well for him as head coach. Now, as an assistant under Evison, it was better. He's sort of been described as solid and likable. He was sort of involved with both power play and the PK at times in Minnesota, predominantly the power play. the Wild man advantage ranked 20th in the NHL in the 3 years that McLean was an assistant coach there. So the results kind of middle of the pack. He didn't have amazing personnel to work with in Minnesota. So that's important context, but he's an okay hire. He's a fine hire. He's not somebody that I'm excited by necessarily, but I'm also not going to sit here and say, and be up in arms and say that Canucks fans should be really, really disappointed by this hire either.
Canucks fans do, at least in our chat, seem a little disappointed. I don't know. I get it. Like, people are saying, oh, inexperienced staff. Cali Canucks said bargain bin coaching staff. Like, we said this the other day too, though. Like, Kevin Dean is not a bargain bin, if you want to call it that, hire. Like, Kevin Dean is someone that we spoke glowingly of the other day, and we are still, like, I'm still excited about him being a part of this staff. I think that's a big deal, and I think that's a big part of this conversation as well. I get it, but I've always said this about coaching staffs as well, and just like, you know, it's like when they announce a developmental hire or whatever, right? I'm usually quick to reserve judgment on that one. You don't really know what they're gonna do. Like, even when Foote was promoted to assistant coach, Foote was a great assistant coach. He was a great assistant coach. That was really his first kick at the can of being an assistant coach. He was a great assistant coach. The Canucks defense, the Canucks penalty kill, way better under Adam Foote. So we reserved judgment when Adam Foote came in. I say something similar when it comes to these hires as well. I get it. I get that there's no NHL head coaching experience. There's zero NHL head coaching experience on that bench, but I honestly, like, I'm not going to pretend to have a problem with it. I'm not going to pretend to really care about it, to be honest with you. I'm going to reserve judgment, and maybe they don't succeed. And maybe you can point to it and say, oh, if they had more experience, maybe they'd succeed. I personally don't look at it and say, oh yeah, I'm so upset about this.
Yeah, Scott Young is interesting. He's a bright mind, has, of course, sort of worked in more of a development capacity for the Canucks recently. I'm interested to see what he can do with Canucks younger players coming up. Overall, I think we agree that we really like the Kevin Dean hire as far as him running the defense and the excellent work that he did in not only Chicago, but also Boston, developing McAvoy and Brendan Carlo as well. Also being a key part of, I believe, Hampus Lindholm's initial resurgence when he moved from Anaheim to Boston in that first year. A little less enthused about McLean, not because he can't be a good offensive coach, but just because I was hoping that, considering the Canucks offensive struggles this past season, that they would find maybe a more established mastermind, somebody that has more pedigree and more of a track record. Again, not saying McLean can't do a good job, but we just don't know if he can or if he's capable of it, because results in Minnesota were okay, but there weren't anything spectacular.
Foote said this about McLean. And I'll get into the roles in a second. Well, McLean's going to run the power play, but we should say this. Foote pointed this out in his presser. They were trying to sway McLean to join Joel Quenneville in Anaheim. Joel Quenneville wanted him on the bench. So it's not like they just called this guy up and were like, hey, you want to come coach in Vancouver? We can't pay you anything, but we can give you exposure. Like, that's not what happened here. It was a guy that other teams wanted, and this does show that he's earned the look that he's getting in Vancouver. He earned it while he was a member of the Wild organization. So, like I said, I reserve judgment. I do, and I know people don't want to hear that. I know I usually have a lot hotter takes about things, but I do really reserve judgment when it comes to coach staff. I think it is worth mentioning as well, though, that David Quinn, who of course was a head coach, with the Rangers and the Sharks, elected to return to the Rangers to serve on Mike Sullivan's bench. But Foote did say that they were really considering him and that they were going down the road. But it sounds like that was one that David Quinn made the decision that he wanted to go back to the Rangers and be an assistant under Mike Sullivan.
Yeah. Quinn's track record as a head coach obviously wasn't the best with the Rangers and Sharks, but his previous track record at lower levels has sort of been terrific, and he would have given them head coaching experience. I'm not as well versed in. It's different when you're a head coach versus an assistant, right? Because one doesn't necessarily translate to the other, right? So Adam Foote, for example, he did not have any success in Kelowna as a WHL head coach. He joined Talkett's staff and had a lot of success as an assistant, here. So that it's hard for me to judge whether Quinn would have been successful here or not, just because I'm not as well versed on what exactly would he have looked like as an assistant. And that's why I'm also not going to judge McLean too harshly right off the bat, because yes, track record in Iowa the last 2 years was pretty awful, was pretty horrible. But it's way different being an assistant when you've got a very specific portfolio and you're working on, one specific, let's say, special teams and one sort of group of players. Whereas when you're a head coach and you're more generally managing things.
Don B said this in the chat. Do you think it's possible that they're going to hire one more offensive-minded consultant? I don't think so. I think Foot was actually asked about that on the call today, and I'm pretty sure he said this is it. These are the hires. I wouldn't expect, once they make that announcement, we touched on this the other day as well. Once they make the announcement, this is the coaching staff for 25-26. Obviously, it's also worth mentioning Jason Krog, the Sedins, and Marco Terenius, who of course is the goaltending coach. Those guys are all remaining in their normal roles with the Canucks. They're all returning to the staff. Sergei Gonchar, should also mention it, part-timer, no longer with the team. That was something that even Rick Tocchet was talking about, that they wouldn't have part-time staff. So Sergei Gonchar no longer with the team. Who's the other one? I mean, obviously we talked about Yogi. Was that it? Was it just those two?
Dylan Crawford, the video coach, is leaving as well.
Yeah. Okay. And they are going to replace Dylan, I think. I think that was the only thing that they have left to hire.
Yeah, I mean, they need a video coach, so.
Yeah. Or do you? Next week on Canucks Conversation. Do you need video coaches? Okay, I wanted to get to this one as well. Irfaan Scheid in the chat brought this up as well. Earlier today on Sportsnet 650, your colleague that you already brought up on today's show, Michael Russo, brought up Marco Rossi and saying that he's been hearing that the Canucks really, really like Marco Rossi and would like to make a trade for him. We've had the Marco Rossi conversation at multiple points. I am still skeptical based on the size, but the thing that I'm coming to terms with, Harm, is that no matter who the Canucks are trading for, you look at all the names out there, there's always a little bit of a, yeah, this is great, but all of these players have some sort of flaws. Like, there's no Quinn Hughes available on the trade block, on the trade market. You're not hearing those names out there. There's always something. Even like Owen Power, I saw that suggested today. Owen Power can't defend. Like, he hasn't been able to defend at the NHL level. So no matter who you look at, there's going to be flaws. And if Marco Rossi's biggest flaw is his size, yes, I worry about it because of a 1-2 punch with Elias Pettersson and Marco Rossi. Obviously, that's a pretty weak center ice position, 1-2 punch. But you are going to have flaws with any of these players that you're talking about. And if that's the flaw, does that make you a little more open to the idea of Marco Rossi coming to Vancouver?
Well, the issue is, what are the alternatives, right? I don't think Rossi's a perfect player by any means, not just because of the size element, but because I have some question marks about how much of a driver is he by himself offensively. I've mentioned this before, but he's been more of a net front scorer. And this past season, he was stapled with one of Kaprizov or Boldy for really the entire season. And those superstar play driving wingers that can handle most of the transition responsibilities, that can do most of the cooking offensively for a line, you don't have that caliber of winger here for Rossi to play with. So I wonder about the fit as far as, would he still put up 60 points if he came to Vancouver? But in having said that, he's a young, 23-year-old, like bona fide top six centerman, and those guys there aren't many of them available, right? What are the backup options? Getting into the Pavel Zacha tier, because as much as we can throw around pie in the sky names like Dylan Larkin and Tage Thompson and Matt Barzal.
Yes, to all three. Get all three.
I'd be shocked if any of those guys are realistically available. And even the Bo Horvat conversation, even if you are in the camp that they should go out and trade for him again, Horvat has trade protection. And the way things ended for him in Vancouver, I'm not convinced that he'd want to necessarily come back. So you are, as you alluded to, with whatever center you acquire, going to have to live with some kind of flaws, whether it's Rossi, whether it's Zegras. There are going to be some question marks, some concerns. And at least the positive with Rossi is that if he hits, he's a young player that you would control for a long time. It's not like you're trading prime assets for somebody that's 29 or 30 years old that may not have a lot of prime productive years left. So as much as I look at Rossi and go, he's not a perfect or ideal fit, he may be the best of a pool of flawed options.
Good way to put it. And there's a lot of flawed options right now. That's the thing. That's what I was trying to get at earlier, is that you're not going to find a perfect player right now on the trade market. And rarely ever will you find a perfect player on the trade market. A lot of questions about what the price is going to be. Listen, we're going to get into all of this. We have a lot of shows still to do. We're going to get into all of this, and the price for a lot of guys is going to fluctuate. And we've made the point a few times, and if you're just joining us, we've made the point a few times that you need to go out and get a couple guys, maybe 3 forwards for this forward group. You're going to have to go to different tiers. It's going to cost different things. You're going to have to take different risks. Like Jonathan Marchessault, not the perfect target, but when I brought it up, everyone's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. If it's not going to cost you a lot, like, you got to explore all of your options if you're trying to really improve this forward group. Did you have anything else that you wanted to get to, Harm?
Nope.
Okay, I have one. Shout out to Jake, regular listener to the show. I was at the driving range last night, and he came up to me, introduced himself. We talked hockey. We talked game 1 of the cup final because both of us left as soon as that game was over. What a game it was, just from a pure entertainment perspective. The back and forth nature of it, the fact it went to overtime, how loud it was in, what's the place called? Rogers Place? I just said Rogers Center a few times today. So
Rogers Place, yeah.
Rogers Place. How loud it
Rogers
was.
Arena, Rogers Place, Rogers Center, Rogers everything.
Yeah, exactly. It was so loud in Rogers Place, and that was evident on the broadcast. Look, man, I love the Oilers fans' costumes. I think it's funny how those guys are all showing up wearing different stuff. I saw the guys that had Happy painted on their chests. We saw Bag Milk, who's going to join the show tomorrow. Yeah, Bag Milk's joining the show tomorrow. He got a couple photos and videos of the guys with Happy painted on their chest for the Happy Gilmore 2 coming out next month, actually. I'm very excited for that movie. I know people think it's going to be bad. I don't think it's going to be bad. I'm so excited for it.
I love the original, but I think the sequel's... I'm going to watch it anyway because you have to, but I think the sequel's going to be bad.
I don't think it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be great.
It's going to be different, and if people just go into it expecting it to be different, it'll still be an enjoyable movie. The original's so good, though.
I would rather go in, like, the original set the bar so high, I would rather go in expecting it to be bad and be positively surprised than go in with high expectations, because sequels rarely live up to the OG version.
I think it's going to be great. I'm very excited. I'm looking at the cast. Yeah, Julie Bowen's back. What's not to like? This is going to be great.
And like the list of guys that they got to make cameos is insane.
Rory's in it. That's hilarious. Rory McIlroy.
Rory, John Daly. I think Travis Kelce's going to be in it.
Yeah, they got Shooter McGavin back. This is going to be great. Yeah. Everyone miss me if you're talking crap about this movie. I'm very excited to see this. Karn with an awful take saying, just make new movies instead of money-making sequels. Get out of here, Karn. I can't wait for Shrek 5 either. That's going to be great. I'm not even joking. Shrek 5 is going to be a canon event for me. You know what I'm actually really excited for? I was thinking about this recently. The movies, we grew up with. Cars. That movie stands the test of time. They don't make it like Cars anymore. Cars was like one of the greatest movies. The Incredibles, that era of Pixar, just so perfect. Just banger after banger. And I know bangers. I can't wait to show my kids Cars. Like, when I have kids, can't wait for them to sit through that opening scene with Real Gone by Sheryl Crow playing. That is a big moment, I think, in everyone's life, or at least it should be. So I can't wait to pass that down.
Anybody who didn't like Cars as a kid is just like a red flag. It's a character flaw.
Yeah, you know what? You could learn a lot about someone just asking them if they liked that movie. No, that wasn't for me. It's like, what? Cars was like, it's one of the few elite movies. Seriously, it was. Yeah,
so story I'm going to tell. I believe this was it was when I was working for the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs, and I think it was the team that Arshdeep Bains was playing on. We were in Calgary for the Max tournament, which also Marco Rossi was at. So tying a bunch of things together here. But we were in the bus from the rink going back to like the hotel, and the guys were like all watching. These are like 15, 16-year-old hockey players. They were all watching Cars in the bus. throughout the whole tournament. They'd watch it like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time on the bus trips. And then we had a trip later in the season going up to Prince George, and the captain made the entire team in the bus sit and watch cars on the bus TV screens. So it truly is like transcending generations, and I hope that movie never dies. It's one of my favorites.
Excellent film. Okay, Toy Story, another good one. Yeah, good one. Don B said Quads is in his back in my day phase. Gardening, building stuff, remembering his youth movies. And Brad said this, Quads, how long did you spend in Cars World at Disneyland? I've said this before on the show. I've never been on a plane that isn't going to Edmonton. That is the only.
Wait, what?
I've told you that. You definitely know this, but I've said it on
No,
the show.
I don't.
No, I've never been on a plane that isn't going to Edmonton and wasn't for work. Like I've never traveled for fun.
Oh,
I've never been to Disneyland.
Damn.
No, I never traveled. Like I've been on the ferry a lot. We used to do vacations to like Vancouver Island a lot, though. That was fun. But no, I never flown that wasn't for work. Every flight I've been on has either
plane ride
started
to
or
Edmonton.
destined.
I'm so sorry, dude.
I've only been between YVR and YEG. Those are the only places I've ever been. But hey, the Edmonton Airport Chili's, game changer. But no, I'm really excited. Like we're planning our honeymoon stuff. Also to Edmonton.
I love how you said that with a straight face too.
Yeah. No, we're planning our honeymoon and I'm gonna get to go on a plane and fly somewhere that isn't Edmonton, and I'm actually very excited. So yeah, no, I've never traveled, and I am definitely, and look, I was talking about kids. I'm definitely traveling before I have kids, and that's part of the plan here. So people get to hear about my adventures where I travel. And Zest with a really good point. Incredibles 3 in 2027. Is that true? Is that really true? Oh yeah, they are making a third one. Nice.
Are we getting that before GTA 6?
2027. No, GTA 6 comes out May 2026. May 15th, I think, right? Can you tell that I'm excited for GTA 6? May 26th, 2026. That's where we're getting GTA 6. All right, we're going on long here.
Yeah, we're well over time.
Yeah, let's go to, and Conversation said, Quads, you should go home to Italy. Yes, that is the plan, is to go to Italy. I'm planning on doing that at some point. All right. Except, you know what? No, I'm not going to get into it. No, I am going to get into it. Yeah, RE45 said, you live in BC. I don't blame you. Such a beautiful province. Yeah, I do a lot. I've done a lot of traveling throughout BC and vacations throughout BC, and I love doing that. But yeah, no, I'm excited to get on the plane. I'm going to get on a plane, have a good time. Oh yeah, I was gonna say this though. When I talk about going to Italy, my nonno's always like, "Oh, perfect. You have family here, here, and here. You can just stay with them." It's like, ideally, and I hope none of my Italian cousins and family are listening, because I do have a lot of family still in Italy that we still talk to quite a bit. Ideally, none of them know that I'm there. That's my ideal vacation. Is like, I don't need to stay with you. I don't need you to show me around. I don't know. And no disrespect, but just leave me alone. I don't know. That's how I like to operate. All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by our friends at, you guessed it, Bet365. I'm not taking this just because he's on a couple of my fantasy teams. I'm taking it because he's been dynamite lately. The Pittsburgh Pirates are taking on the Houston Astros. Also, I've been bang on with my bets lately, my baseball bets. The Colorado Rockies got their 11th win of the season. They swept the Miami Marlins right after I took them as a bet. So I'm just pointing that out real quick.
Did that punch-outs guy get his...
Oh, I didn't check that. Jacob, check how many punch-outs Paul Blackburn got in his last start while I do this, okay? All right, Jacob's on it. Today... we're taking Mitch Keller strikeouts. You can get Mitch Keller. What's his over? Oh, yeah. Mitch Keller over 4.5 strikeouts at plus 105. You can get that at Bet365. Keller had 7 against Milwaukee in his second to last start, then 5 against Cincinnati, 8 against the Mets, 6 against St. Louis. And in his last start, it was just 1. So that's maybe what's lowering this line a bit. But plus 105 against the Houston Astros. That is what we were taking. That is our Bet365 bet of the day. And I think I missed the Blackburn bet. I think it was over 3.5 Ks, and he finished with 3 in 5 innings pitched. So we don't hit them all. We missed that one, but we're hitting this one. Mitch Keller taking the over on strikeouts. And if you want to get in the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are also going on right now, along with regular season baseball, Bet365 has got you covered. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line, you can even bet on futures like the Conn Smythe winner, the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we will wrap it up there. For my co-host, Jacob got the answer already. For my co-host, Harman Dial, and our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, my name's Dave Virgelli. Thanks for listening to an extra long edition of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us.